As we begin our journey into the world of operating system deployments, we're going to start here by looking at both boot and operating system images and how to prepare them for deployment. This is where the fun truly begins, deploying operating systems across the infrastructure. And look at the size of this lab. We've got 7 machines in here. I'm pretty sure we broke a record here at CVT Nuggets for the largest lab. But I want to point out at the very bottom here, we have Client 3 and Client 4 NUG. Currently, bare metal machines. There's nothing on them. So our goal over the next handful of nuggets will be to get an operating system on these by PXE booting and installing an operating system over the network and using multicast. So we'll have one stream going to both of these machines simultaneously. Before we get there, however, we need to configure our images. Let's begin here on SCCM NUG and bring up the Configuration Manager console from the taskbar. And let's start here by just taking a quick peek at our distribution points. It's been a while since we prepared our infrastructure for operating system deployment. So I'll head down to Administration, up to Distribution Points, and let's take a look here at the properties of our file NUG DP. Remember, this is our PXE-enabled distribution point. So this is one we're going to be using for clients to pull operating systems down from a network boot. Notice here that it is enabled, it's allowed, and we've enabled unknown computer support because those bare metal machines are unknown machines here to Configuration Manager. The only thing I did here was uncheck require a password. One less step we'll need to do here. That will require manual intervention, and we're going to completely automate this whole thing. Also, we have multicast enabled here. We'll be, again, using multicast to stream down a single copy of the operating system to both of those bare metal machines. All right, now we're ready to prepare some images. Let's head over to Software Library. We'll expand Operating Systems, and let's start here with our boot images. So just a quick overview here. We've got drivers that we can create, both for Windows PE and boot images, as well for our operating system image. We can also create a bunch of drivers and include them into a driver package that we can then associate with those images as well. We have our operating system images here, upgrade packages, boot images, which is where we're going to start again, and then task sequences, which we'll get into in the following nugget, which is what we'll use to tie all of this stuff together and actually contain the instructions for deployment. So boot images, we have 2 built-in boot images that come with Configuration Manager by default. These are not your typical Windows PE boot images. These are not the images you would find on installation media. And just to show you here as an example, if we open up File Explorer and browse over to the software share on FileNUG, I included a directory here for Windows 10 Enterprise. This is the evaluation copy. And inside of here, if we head into sources, there is a boot.wim. That is not the Windows PE boot image. So you won't be able to use these. What you'll want to use is the default ones here within Configuration Manager or the ones stored in the ADK, which is what these are anyway. And then there's also an install.wim, which is the operating system image, and that we will be using. All right, so let me go ahead and minimize this, and let's take a look at the properties here of our 64-bit boot image. On the General tab, we have basic information about the boot image. If we head over to Images, this will actually show us all the metadata associated with that image. We can head over to drivers here. This is where we can include our own custom drivers. Now, these need to be Windows PE drivers, and you really want to be careful adding and bloating this image because it needs to be as lightweight as possible. So you generally won't see folks adding drivers in here except for extremely fringe cases where you need something at the bootstrap level to support non-standard hardware and whatnot. Now, over on the Customization tab, we can enable pre-start commands here. You can customize the Windows PE background, and this is probably the most useful checkbox in all of these property pages. This allows you to hit F8 to get a command prompt. Extremely useful for troubleshooting, and that's also why you have this testing only. You never want to enable this in a production environment because if a user happens to be around that machine, or anybody for that matter, they'll have the ability to get in. Next up, we have the Data Source tab, which shows us the path to this image, and we can also update our distribution points on a schedule. So if you find yourself making changes to these often, you can automate the process of updating your distribution points with these boot images. You can also persist it in the client cache. Enable binary differential replication, useful when you're constantly updating these images. It'll make redistribution much quicker. And then this is an extremely important checkbox. If you plan on PXE booting and installing operating systems over the network, this needs to be checked in order for that to work. And thankfully, it is on by default. And we're going to need that here for our deployment here shortly. These last couple of tabs here, data access and distribution settings, are the exact same as they were with application deployment. They essentially allow us to control how our boot images land and live on distribution points. At the top here, we have content locations. This will show us where we've distributed these boot images to. Optional components here allow us to add more tools into this image to work with in the Windows PE environment. Again, good for troubleshooting. And then you also have the security tab to control who can do what with these images here within Configuration Manager. So we're good here with both of these images just the way they are. Now, one very important thing you need to know about these is even if you're only deploying 32-bit or 64-bit OSs across your environment, both of these boot images need to be deployed to a distribution point. Otherwise, you'll get an error. And we can actually do this all in one shot. We can hold the Shift key down, highlight both of these, and we're going to distribute both of these to a distribution point at the same time. So we'll distribute the content here. We'll choose Next, choose what distribution point we want to associate them with, and we're going to choose just FileNug here, our PXE-enabled distribution point. We'll hit OK, Next, and close. Now you can choose either one of these to monitor the content status. So as soon as that turns green, they've both been distributed to that DP. All right, so I gave that just a few minutes to finish up, and they are both green. So we're good to go with our boot images. Also keep in mind, if you've made changes to these and you ever want to get back to the beginning, you can add your own boot image here, and you can browse to the Windows Installation Kit, which is the location after you install the Windows ADK, and that will contain both of these Windows PE images if you ever need to get back the defaults. Or if for whatever reason you made your own custom Windows PE boot image and you want to add it in, that's how you do so. Now let's move on to operating system images, which we have none of. So we're going to right click here and choose to add an operating system image. And we're going to browse over again to that software share where we have the Windows 10 Enterprise installation media. From here we'll head into sources and we want to grab install.wim. And then we can fly through the rest of this wizard here. We'll leave the defaults for the name. And that's it. Hit close and we now have that image within. Let's take a look at the properties of this image. On the General tab, again here we can give it a name, version, and comment. On the Images tab, we get the metadata around the image for whatever index you have selected. We only have one here because we're dealing with Windows 10 Enterprise Eval, but if this were Windows Server, there would be 4 in here. Server Core, Server Standard, Data Center Core, Data Center Standard. We can also head over to the Data Source tab here to see the image path and a lot of the same information that we looked at there in the property pages of the boot image. But what I really want to show you here is on the distribution settings down here at the bottom. We need to enable multicast here at the image level if we want to support it within our environment. So we're going to go ahead and place a check here. You can also encrypt it or choose to only transfer this via multicast. We will just check that box right there. We can also view our software update schedule on the servicing tab and see what updates have been applied against this image. And then content locations, again here we can see what distribution points it's been distributed to and who has access to work with this image here within Configuration Manager. So this all looks good for our image. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Let's also distribute this to our PXE-enabled DP. So we'll give that a right click. We'll distribute this OS, which is about 4 gigs, so it will take a while before it ends up over on our FileNug DP, which is where we're going to place this. So we'll drop down, choose a distribution point, hit FileNug, and then next, and close. And we can keep hitting refresh here, and eventually that will turn green. It'll take about 15 minutes or so before it's complete. And you'll always want to give it just a little extra time after it turns green to make sure that those bits have completely landed in their proper locations. And just to show you something here, if we head into File Explorer, let's browse over to the $, share over on FileNug. And inside of our content library is where, again, we will find all of this content. So E here, if we look here, NUG000E, that's our image. That's our Windows 10 image within there. So that's the data library. Here's the file library. That's where the actual content lives. And then the package library, more metadata. And another thing over here in the $, if we head into remote install, this is the WDS directory that is going to contain all of the PXE-related boot programs. So if we head into remote install here, there's SMS boot. You want to make sure that these contain files, because if they don't, then PXE booting will not work. And these will contain files after you deploy your boot images. So I can tell that we're already successful because we've got fonts in there, we've got x64 boot programs within here, and x86. So we're good to go as far as our boot images go. We just need to wait for this operating system image to finish deployment. Oh, and look at that. It did. So now that distribution is complete, our next step is to deploy this image using a task sequence. And that's where we'll pick up in our following nugget. In the CBT Nugget, we covered how to create and prepare operating system images for deployment through Configuration Manager. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.